Hi, this is Lyndall with Watery Wishes, and today I have a card that's a little bit all over the place. It's a birthday card from my nephew, and his birthday is very soon after Christmas, and I've had a lot of schoolwork due and other things going on, and my life's been a little bit hectic. So this one it's recorded a little bit out there and choppy because I was more concerned with getting it done for my nephew. Now, I stamped out the images and I wasn't overly concerned with getting a really good stamp because I was going to be outlining the images with some EK Success journaling pens, which are Copic safe, because I was going to be drawing the background, some volcanoes in the background and some hills and some dirt in the foreground. And there you just saw me trace over the image that I'd created to create a mask, and I used a little bit of Tombow glue to make it sticky. So when you put Tombow glue down, if you let it dry, it dries sticky, but you must let it dry before you turn it around and put it on your card, because otherwise it will bring up paper and it will adhere. So I spread that around with my fingers, and then I adhered that down over the volcanoes. And as you can see now, I am using 4 shades of Distress Oxide ink to create a sort of yellow to dark purple sunset in the sky. And the colours I'm using are Wild Honey, Carved Pumpkin, Picked Raspberry, and Seedless Preserves. And this is the best bit, the reveal. I just love pulling off masks. And I learnt that trick with the Tombow glue off of Kelly Latavola, and she'll be linked up in the corner of the video. And go and check her out if you haven't. Here I'm just laying in some light grey Copic marker, and I'm laying in the light colour first because I have refills for the C1 and the C3, and Copics blend in saturated paper. So I wanted to get the paper a little bit saturated because I'm doing such a large area with a Copic that I had a refill for. And I actually ended up putting a little bit of extra ink in the C3 when I was doing this. So I actually go quite dark on the tops of these mountains. And honestly, if I was to do it again, I'd probably lay down another mask and do it with some Distress Oxide inks like I do the foreground piece. But I didn't, and I lived with my decision. So, and this is just a marker from a cheap set of markers that I got online. It's a Touch 5 marker, and I just happen to have a darker colour in that marker set where I've only got up to C7 in the Copic markers so far. And because it's an alcohol marker, it mixes fairly well with the Copics. So because I'm making a shaker, I'm colouring a little bit lower than what would be covered up by the foreground piece on top. Here I'm using some hickory smoke, and as you can see, this is toned more like a warm grey, And to blend it in, I actually used some of the cooler greys on top of it in places and some black soot to blend that in a little bit better with the background panel. And here's me coming in with a little bit of that black soot. Now I'm using finger daubers for this simply because some of the areas I want to get inked in are too small for a blending tool, for one of the Tim Holtz blending tools. They would probably be fine if you were using some of the small picket fence brushes, which I'm dying to get my hands on. I've seen so many crafters use them and they look just fabulous. But we're a little bit out of my budget at the moment with my niece and my nephew both having birthdays really close to Christmas. My niece has a birthday before Christmas and my nephew has a birthday straight after it. So I get a little bit broke around Christmas time. But the niece and nephew sort of come before my crafting supplies, so they're on the list of things to get, so you should check them out if you do. They just look fabulous. And I did a bit of this colouring off camera. As I said, I was a bit hasty to get this one done, so I wasn't paying as much attention to whether I was in frame or not. And I felt that he was just too bright for the rest of the card, so I'm trying to darken him up a bit with one of the grey markers. Now I'm just adding all of his spikes and his nails. I started with yellows for the lava on the volcanoes simply because I didn't want them to be bright tomatoey red. I wanted them to be a bit warmer, and because Copics are a little bit translucent, you'll find that if you put down a bit of orange or yellow underneath a red, it will look a little bit more towards the orange hue side. And here I come in with a little bit more of that yellow. Right, this, I don't have any square dies, like, you know, rectangle dies, but I do have this one frame die that I can't quite remember where I got it from. Well, I do have rectangle and square dies, they're just not big enough for a card front. So I wanted a border, so what I did is I used this border die to cut myself a border, and it worked just as well. Here I'm just re-outlining the tops of those volcanoes where the oxide ink made it a bit dull, and then I'm going to go in and trace over those little lava rocks and the bits of lava spewing out the volcanoes so that they look more prominent because they got covered up by the oxides as well. So when I first set out to make this card, I had a very rough idea of what I was going to do, but as I said, it was sort of, it wasn't well planned out, and it was sort of a spur of the moment thing. I knew I wanted volcanoes and I knew I wanted the dragons because it's the only kid-centric stamp that I have left that I haven't sent to my nephew. So I had a vague idea, but I really didn't have the perfect layout in mind, but I knew I wanted to do a shaker with it because I had these orange sequins that would be perfect in this type of scene for a shaker. So I've cut out a piece of acetate, and after adhering the foreground piece behind the frame, I'm now putting some adhesive tape, and I prefer adhesive tape when I'm adhering down acetate or adhering onto acetate, because it doesn't ooze out, it sticks really well, and you don't have to worry about bits of glue smearing on the acetate and making it look dirty. Now here I've doubled up some 3M mounting foam, and I cut it into thirds lengthwise, and now I'm forming a section for the sequins to go in, and I'm making it deeper underneath that foreground piece so that they're hidden until you shake the card. And I believe I got these orange sequins in a previous Simon Says stamp kit, probably the fall one, which is Thanks and Leaves, I believe. And I used most of them, but not all of them for this card. As I said, I wanted them to be hidden behind those foreground hills, so that when they shook, they came out, but you didn't see them until then. I felt the dragon was a little bit too light and bright against the volcano-y background, so I grabbed a pink Copic and went over him to make him more purplish, to sort of go a little bit better with the purple up the top, which you can't really see that much of. You can see it a little bit more in real life, but not so much on camera. So I decided to use the Wow metallic platinum embossing for the sentiment, and I did a bit of stamp surgery. I took the magical off of one of the sentiments out of this stamp set, and I chopped it off, and I used a sentiment out of the Lawn Fawn Out of This World, and I think it says hope your birthday is, and then I put magical from the Magical Dragon set after it. So I'm using the same Simon Says stamp slate cardstock as I used for the border for the sentiment piece. And a lot of this was out of frame. I'm sorry, but I was sort of in a rush. So as usual, I use my powder tool. I ink it up with some embossing ink. In this instance, it happens to be the Simon Says stamp clear ink. Put the embossing powder on, and then heat it with my heat tool. Once I'd heated this sentiment, I realised that it was going to be hard to see the platinum on this cardstock. So I got out some Hero Arts white pigment ink, and I put that over the top. And I put another piece of the slate cardstock behind it. And I'm going to stick that along that bottom edge opposite where I plan to put the dragon. Now, I felt that the card was a little bit bare, so off camera I coloured in this red dragon that I'd stamped out as well. I felt he was a bit too bright as well, so I darkened him up a bit with the grey marker as well. And then I cut his bum off and stick him under the frame so it looks like he's coming out from under the frame. And I used some dry tape adhesive for adhering these down as well. Now, because I was in such a rush to get this card made and posted, I didn't get any photos of it, but I did get some still frames of it, which you will see in a little while. I'm also sorry I haven't posted for a while. The holidays and schoolwork's really set me off schedule for making and posting cards. And that was my little chihuahua you could hear barking maybe. So that is the card. If you liked it, hit the like button. Loved it if you subscribed. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And don't forget, have fun crafting your imagination. Bye.